Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with a little more discernment. Today we're going to be diving back into the book of Jasher. We will be reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue the exploration. Before we begin, however, if you were unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above in the box down below, along with the original source material. So that's not above, we're live. So that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. If you find value in what I am doing, then do all of the wonderful things down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated, put it in the box, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you truly find value, hit me with the super chat or super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of one of my books. The first one, a series of unconventional beliefs, is my story on how I healed myself through the use of the electromagnetic forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit. The second one, the Green Stone, is a further exploration of the spiritual alchemy that was began in a series of unconventional beliefs, and I consider it to be the completion of two of Carl Jung's works, the Mysterium Conjunctionis and his work with the archetypes, because I did rework the MBTI system according to it works out with alchemy. And the third one is going to be the most relevant to today, a house built upon shifting sands. It is a biblical deconstruction of the Bible using primarily the Bible as the source to do so. The internal contradictions really tear the whole thing apart, much like what we see in Jasher. These books are available for purchase at the links down below, or they are also available in the playlist that are linked as well. The appropriate title will get you the appropriate book. I do that so people can know exactly where I'm coming from and what all of my points are. Buying the books is a good way to support the channel, but you can do it for free. With all of that being said, we are going to dive in and pick up where we left off in Jasher with chapter 13. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, to Sarai, his daughter in law, and Sarai, his daughter in law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with him from Ur Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with God and men, and that the Lord his God was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years. And at the expiration of 3 years, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee forth from Ur Kasdim and delivered thee from the hands of all thine enemies. And now, therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice and keep my commandments, my statutes, and my laws, then will I cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of thy hands, and thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife and all belonging to thee, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there. And I will be there. I will there be unto thee for a God, and I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife and all belonging to him, and he went to the land of Canaan as the Lord had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from the land of Haran. All right, we've already got a good bit to discuss. So, first off, right out of the gate, this is a completely different narrative than what we got in Genesis in its entirety, right? Genesis' narrative is that he left the lands. That is the whole of the story. He goes out and he wanders. He is covetous the whole way. There's that. And uh, the whole story is just rife with problems. But this is a completely different narrative than anything that we've seen before. And we see Taraz taking his son Abram and his grandson Lot. And we've already read the last one, so we know the backstory. But the intimation from the phrasing in this sentence is that Terah makes the decision to take his son Abram and his grandson Lot, and these people went to leave. And that's not even from this story what has happened. But then towards down here at the end where we got, it says that Abram makes the choice that he is told to go, and it's a reiteration that's not really necessary for the narrative. It is just kind of that apologetics, right? It is making sure that you understand that this is why he left the land of Ur. It's not the fact according to Genesis, not necessarily this book, that he married his sister. That's not why he left. The reason that he left is for this. Uh, and also, right, in Genesis, we don't have any laws, really. There is no commandments other than go forth, multiply, be stewards of the earth, shed no blood of man, right? Those are the commandments that are given to Noah when he comes down after the flood. When they leave the garden, it's be fruitful and multiply, till the earth, reap the benefits thereof. It's going to be a little hard to get them, but they're yours. That was the commandments in Genesis, right? In its entirety. We didn't get any more commandments at all until we get out. Now, and so there is the whole problem that you can't keep commandments that don't exist. They're not recorded, so they didn't exist. Now, this is making up for that, right? This is telling you that there was commandments. It hasn't told us what they are yet. You're supposed to know it's the exact same ones from Exodus that don't even come into existence for another 1,000 years. It's supposed to be the exact same thing, and you should know that. That's what this text is doing, right? That's what apologetics do. They take the part that you don't know, they explain it, and they leave the part that you do know so that you can make the assumption that it is directly tied. There was no commandments in Genesis other than be fruitful and multiply, shed no blood of man, be stewards of the earth. That's the whole sum. There was no, the Lord thy God is your only God. You shall have no false idols. None of that. None of that existed. There were laws, right? But that is outside of the Genesis narrative. We do have written records that there were laws existent in Ur at the contemporaneous time period of Abram. But we don't have the commandments of God clearly delineated at all before Exodus, even into Leviticus. Um, and it is important to note that in the Exodus narrative, it is not God that gives them the law, right? They go to Midian. Jethro's like, what are you doing sitting here in judgment with all of these people every single day? You need to codify it. You need to write these things down, define the laws, appoint some judges, and they can handle the small stuff. And that frees you up for the big stuff. That came from Jethro. That didn't come from God. That wasn't a directive from God. That was directly from Jethro in the text. And so the text tells you that the law is man made. The commandments supposedly came from God, and there's a whole argument to be made about that. And I do in other places, so I'm not going to here. But it is important to note, right, that there were no commandments, there were no laws, there were no statutes other than go forth, be fruitful, multiply, be stewards of the earth, shed no blood of man. Back to the text. And Abram came to the land of Canaan and dwelt in the midst of the city. And he there pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan and said to him, this is the land which I give unto thee and to thy seed after thee forever. And I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. And Abram built an altar in the place where God had spoken to him, and Abram there called upon the name of the Lord. All right, once again, we have significant deviance from Genesis because in Genesis, we don't get the name of the Lord, right? We don't get the name of the Lord until Exodus when he says, who do I tell them that you are? And he says, tell them that I am. Same word as in Genesis, that whole creation narrative being distorted intentionally, right? I am the light, not let there be the light. It is the exact same phraseology in the burning bush when he says, tell them I am, right? Exact same word. Really strange. And in that place, it tells you the name of God is that he is. It is I am. He is the God of creation. He is the God inside of creation. All of creation is God. And so, uh, he doesn't proportion out these things. You are my special person. You get this chunk of land, right? That doesn't happen. That's not a reality. In reality, if you take right actions, you may be rewarded for the actions that you take. And it may be that you get the things that you desire, maybe that you don't. That's the reality of the situation that nobody wants to talk about. Right? Abram was not a faithful, true, and just man in his ways throughout his life, as explained in Genesis. And so, why did he get these lands? There were already people living in the land of Canaan. That is why it is called the land of Canaan. They were Canaanites, that was their land. Why did it become Abram's land? Okay, now Abram has this land. He goes in, he sees this land. God says, "This is your land." Okay, so now he has this land. And how long does he have this land for? He has this land forever. But why does he lose it for a chunk of time? Why does all of a sudden it become somebody else's land? That is going against the promise given by God. God Himself said, "I give unto thee and to thy seed forever this piece of property. This is yours." And if that is the will of God, then why is it disrupted that they go off later because of wanderings? Because God couldn't foresee that they were going to disobey. That was outside of the realm of conception. And so, problems, right? Big, big problems. I will make thy seed like the stars of heaven, but everybody else there that has seed, their children are going to multiply as well. We have evidence of that. I will give unto thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. That is simply apologetics for genocide later, but that genocide really never even happened, right? It's really weird how they claim for themselves as a people a mass genocide. That is what they do, right? They go in, they kill everything. They kill Midian straight off the top after they receive assistance from Midian. After they receive the law from Midian, they're guided through the desert by Midian. Yes, that is textual. It's not a pillar of fire. The Midianites do it. And so, after all of that, all of the assistance that they receive, they go and kill Midian. They destroy the entirety of the place. I wonder why. Could it be to cover tracks? Well, but on top of that, no reason to believe that these people never existed. So there is that as well. There is reason to believe that Abram did exist, right? I say often that we don't have reason to believe that Moses existed. There is no real textual evidence outside of the Bible to signify that. That is not true with Abram, right? Abram, and as specified against Abraham for the most part, is a name that is recorded in a multitude of places by a multitude of peoples. Seems to have been a fairly popular name, right? Like Yeshua is a fairly popular name. Uh, and so we do have evidence that there was at least an Abram, as we don't really have any evidence that there was a Moses. If there was a Moses, he was Midianite. That is pretty conclusive. But if God gives you something, He doesn't take it away. If God promises something forever, it's yours forever. There's not going to be any periods where it's not. Another promise that God gives much later in the Exodus narrative, right? When Moses is taking his people, he makes a promise to them, right? You know what that promise was? Not that they can have the land. He meant that is there too, but the promise I'm referring to, he says, "I will go before thee and drive out thine enemies." And he does that 0 times. That doesn't happen a single time that they have their enemies driven out from before them. They have to fight the whole way. It's amazing how God just betrays his promises. "I will give it to thee and thy seed forever" means that they will have it forever, not that somebody else will possess it for a couple of centuries in the interim. That's not what that means. And at that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days of Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah his father, and Lot the son of Haran, and all dwelling to them dwelt in Haran. Again, a deviation from Genesis, because in Genesis they were all dwelling in the same land up until the division of the Sodom and Gomorrah choice. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. For all the kings and cities of the plain had served Chedorlaomer for 12 years, sorry, and given him a yearly tax. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against him. Sorry, I was trying to get through that before I cleared my throat, but I couldn't do it. It's winter. And in the 10th year of Abraham's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was a war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Chedorlaomer and to subdue him. Wait. Okay. Came to fight with. Like the phrasing on that's a little awkward. For Chedorlaomer was, at that time, one of the princes of the host of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained were also scattered upon the face of the earth, Chedorlaomer went to the land of Elam, and reigned over it, and rebelled against his lord. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and anger to war with Chedorlaomer. And I don't know how to pronounce the name, so I'm trying to work it out in my head. And Nimrod assembled all of his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Chedorlaomer. And Chedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men. And they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. All right, so I already don't believe, like we discussed this in the introduction, the groundwork video. I do not believe that 5,000 men went up against 700,000 men and prevailed. Not without direct intervention, right? And we have zero correlation that actually happens, right? We don't have a single battle, as far as I am aware. And if I am wrong, please, by all means, drop that one in the comments. Not a single example of two armies fighting and one of them being eradicated by an act of God. Now, you can make the argument about the day that the earth stood still. There is significant reason to believe that that was an actual event. It is recorded by a multitude of peoples in a multitude of places that are not connected with each other. That is probable, right? That is a probable event. But this is not, right? The two groups came together, and the only way that this is possible is if there is direct divine intervention. A pillar of fire coming down and directly consuming 700,000 people would be a marked event. It would be significant. There would be a lot of evidence of that amount of fire, right? If a meteor came down and struck, there would be debris. We would know that there was an event that happened in that area, and there would be bodies, right? The ones that weren't incinerated would be immediately covered over. We would be able to excavate. We would know that there were a 700,000 population in that area, right? Many of them would be encapsulated in the dirt. They wouldn't get caught in the fireball, right? They would smash into the earth and it would push the dirt up. The fire would explode over the top of that. The dirt would come directly down on top of these 700,000 people. I mean, maybe not all of them, but that's a lot of people. Like a lot of people. Like a lot. That's bigger than most armies of the world today, right? It is bigger than most of the armies of the world today. And all those kings fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Chedorlaomer. And there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000, and Mardon, the king's son, fell amongst them. And Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land, and he was under subjection to Chedorlaomer for a long time. And Chedorlaomer returned to his land and sent princes of his host to the kings that dwelt around him, to Arioch, king of Elasar, and to Tidal, king of Goyim, and made a covenant with them, and they were all obedient to his commands. And it was in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 70th year in the life of Abram. And the Lord appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee out of hast him to give thee this land for an inheritance. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing that God has to reintroduce himself every time he pops up? Like every time he pops, he just did this exact same, right? I am the Lord Dagon. I'm going to give you this land. And now I'm the same guy. Hey, look at me. I'm the same guy. Like, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that this is the same guy. I wonder why. I wonder why. I wonder what could possibly be going on there. No, but it's funny to me that he's got to continuously reintroduce himself. Now, therefore, walk before me and be perfect and keep my commands. For to thee and to thy seed I will give this land for an inheritance, from the river Mitzrayim to the great river Euphrates. And thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace and in good age. And the fourth generation shall return here in this land and shall inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, and he called upon the name of the Lord, who appeared to him, and he brought up sacrifices upon the altar to the Lord. So he summoned God, right? He called upon the name of the Lord who appeared to him. He summoned the Lord of the entire universe. I am sure that is exactly who popped up in his summoning circle. I am sure that is exactly who was listening to his every command. What? And at that time, Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother, and his father's household, and Abram and his wife, and all belonging to him, returned to Haran, and Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. I I believe in the entities, right? I do. I believe that there are entities that they are aligned both positively and negatively. They are expressed and understood as angels for some people, as genies for others. It doesn't matter to me the designator that you put upon them. I do believe that they do exist. I have been visited by one. It was a very short thing, right? He came in, he said, "Hey, you're gonna spread the word of God," was literally the entire conversation, and then he was gone. I didn't ask any questions. There wasn't no interaction. I didn't call upon any names. It was completely independent of myself, and I denied that it happened for a very long time. But, right. Um, He calls upon the name of the Lord and the Lord appears to him. I believe that there are entities and that you can summon them, that they do give you means to do so. There is just extraordinary problems trying to deal with these entities. The name that you call upon, if not given to you directly from the entity, is probably wrong. If it is given to you from the entity, it may be wrong because the entities that are aligned for the betterment of humanity, they can't lie to you. But the ones that are aligned for the detriment of humanity, and yes, they exist, they can. And if you summon one that is aligned for the detriment, they can tell you that they are aligned for the betterment. They can lie to you about their name. They can answer to the wrong name. They can act like they're trapped in a circle. All of those things are possible, but it doesn't make them actual, right? If you call upon the name Michael and this being appears, it might be the Michael that is associated with the betterment of humanity. It might be Lucifer saying that his name is Michael and pretending to be trapped in your circle, and you make a deal with it. That seems like a brilliant idea. You follow the commands of it. Seems like a brilliant idea, doesn't it? I don't deal with the entities. Like, I have opened myself up for context. I've had zero takes. I know entities have reached out to me in my meditative processes. I have requested it if it is there, right? Means that they're not in my beck and call, at least. Maybe non-existent. Maybe I had a hallucination when I had my experience. I am still open to that possibility. I mean, I believe it was real. It literally worked towards changing my life. And so I do believe in these things. But that is a belief. It is speculative, and I don't assert it as fact. I relay it as an experience. I tell you all of the time, I can't give you an experience, right? I can only relay it. If I can't give it to you literally in a box, then take it with a grain of salt. Back to the text. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram, and Abram taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways. And he taught them to know the Lord. And in those days the Lord appeared to Abram in Haran and said to him, Behold, I spoke unto thee these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from thy land, from thy birthplace and from thy father's house to the land which I have shown thee to give it to thee and to thy children. For there in that land will I bless thee, and make thee a great nation, and make thy name great, and in thee shall the families of the earth be blessed. Now, therefore, arise, go forth from this place, thou, thy wife, and all belonging to thee, and every one born in thy house, and all the souls thou hast made in Haran, and bring them out with thee from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. And Abram rose and took his wife Sarah, and all belonging to him, and all that they were born to him in his house, and the souls which they had made in Haran, and they came to go out to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord to Abram. And he pitched his tent, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot, his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And the Lord again appeared to Abram and said, To thy seed will I give this land. And he there built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre. It's also interesting how he has to keep reiterating his promises. Jasher, chapter 14. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom, and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indigent, and his name was Rikayon, and he was hard set to support himself. And he resolved to go to Egypt, to Oswiris, the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight, to raise him up to give him maintenance, and Rikayon did so. Okay, first off, straight off the top, right? The tippy top of everything. In those days, in the land of Shinar, a wise man who had understanding in all wisdom. All wisdom is a big word, right? Intelligence is the capacity to learn. Knowledge is the things that you have learned, and wisdom is the ability to use those things properly. To have the wisdom to do all things is a big deal, right? That is divine level understanding. Nobody has understanding in all things. You probably don't have a full understanding in the thing that you do professionally. The statistics support that. Some people do, right? There's always exceptions, but for the most part, the overwhelming majority of doctors are not even caught up to date with the current research in their own specialty. It's just a part of the life. There is just too much information to consume. There's not enough time in the day. That would be the all understanding and all wisdom in one particular area that you devote your life to. That's a hard thing, right? To have understanding in all wisdom, that is an overwhelmingly hard thing, probably a non existent thing outside of divinity, and divinity is never inside of the creation. But on top of that, if he has understanding in all wisdom, which is the ability to practically apply all knowledge, he was poor and indigent, and he was pretty. Come on, bruh. Come on, bruh. Like for real, if you are smart enough to apply any specific piece of knowledge in the correct way, you can become a tyrant, right? You can become the force to be reckoned with if you have the proper application of wisdom in your life, in whatever area, in one specific area. You can become that dude. I mean, if you know enough about grapes, you become that dude for grapes. And everybody comes to you for knowledge. Everybody that knows about you will come seek you for knowledge about grapes. Wine, exact same thing. Whatever it is, if you have the knowledge, the ability to apply the wisdom, you are that dude. And if you can do that and you are pretty, you are a king. They will put you in a position of authority. It's just the way it works. Now, I'm not pretty, right? I got a little bit of charisma. I can work it up with my words, But I am not a pretty guy, right? I'm average, best of it, right? My wife thinks I look good. That's good. But most people is not going to be like, ooh, that dude there, right? It's just a fact of life. But if I was pretty, I could rule the world. And that's a big deal too, right? That's just if you were pretty and can apply knowledge, there is nothing going to be held back from you. Most pretty is stupid. It's just the way it works out. I didn't make the rules, I just observed them. Most pretty is dumb. Most people who are overwhelmingly beautiful are not smart. They can't apply wisdom in their own application of life, much less in all. And so, what is being described here is a divine being, right? In those days, in the land of Shinar, a wise man who had understanding in all wisdom and of a beautiful appearance was not poor and indigent. That did not happen. There is no possibility of that happening. It's just not. You will never be able to convince me of that. And his name was Rikayon. And that is a word I have never heard before. That name has never been a reference for me for anything. And so, on its face, this entire narrative is gone. This is not a thing. This is an allegory. This is a story. This is a myth. This is something, a fable, but it is not an accurate representative of a truthful statement. And then he goes to Egypt, meets the son of Anam, king of Egypt, to show the king his wisdom so that he might find grace, to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. And when Rikayon came to Egypt, he asked the inhabitants of Egypt concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Egypt told him the custom of the king of Egypt. For it was then the custom of the king of Egypt that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that, the king would return to his palace to remain there. I do not know at all if that is a factual statement. That should be a fairly provable statement. Right? There's meticulous record keeping about a lot of things. I don't know all of the things about Egypt. I don't really care to know all of the things about Egypt. This may be confirmed somewheres. This may be denied somewheres. I have zero reference, but that should be confirmable, right? Somebody should be able to look that up. And on the day that when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and every one having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. The one day out of the whole year that okay, whoever has a suit, come on up. Everybody that's got a grievance, come tell the king on one day of the year. And when Rikayon heard of the custom in Egypt and that he could not come into the presence of the king, he was grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening, Rikayon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Egypt, and he abode there all night in bitterness of soul and pinched with hunger, and sleep was removed from his eyes. Again, if you have the application of all wisdom, you do not operate with a bitterness of soul. Doesn't happen. And Rikayon, I don't even have all wisdom, and I'm already past that. And Rikayon considered within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he arose in the morning and walked about, and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seed, with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rikayon wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city, but he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support, and the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him and left him nothing. So he did not have the ability to be wise enough to disseminate that wisdom. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul and went sighing to the bakehouse, in which he had remained all the night before and slept there a second night. And on that night again he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingeniously, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands, and he led them to the top of the Egyptian sepulchre, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, Thus saith the king, strengthen yourselves to be valiant men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Richion to the people of Egypt the whole of that year. Okay, so he was just able to go and do this, right? He was able to use the authority of the king to extort 200 pieces of silver, and nobody questioned that. That's likely, right? People don't love their silver. They're not going to be bitching about that when somebody dies. And in 8 months' time, Richion and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Richion took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men and gave them horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came round, at the time the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Egypt assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Richion and his men. Oh, it's because it was just the one day is the only day they can do that, right? And the king went forth on the appointed day, and the Egyptians came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever. What is this thing thou doest in the town to thy servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam, unto this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but thou dost not only do this, but from the dead also thou exactest a tax day by day. Now, O king, we can bear no more of this, for the whole city is ruined on this account, and dost thou not know it? Exactly. Exactly. Like, even if he's not seen in public, there is a 0% chance that somebody with some influence did not bring this to his attention over the course of 8 months. There is a 0% chance. Even even a not good king, right? Even one who is completely dismissive of his duties, a Nero, is going to hear about it. And if it is not him getting the tax, you can bet your ass the king is not going to tolerate it. And he's got more than 30 men, presumably, right? We're dealing with 700,000 men armies, or 700,000 versus 5,000. And when the king heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And that is the part I have trouble with. And the king said, Who and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Richion and his men. And the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Richion and his men to be brought before him. And Richion took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and set them upon horses, and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king, with which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt wondered at the work of Richion, and they saw his riches and the present that he had brought to the king. And he greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Richion sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works. And Richion spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Egypt. And when the king heard the words of Richion and his wisdom, Richion found grace in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king and from all the inhabitants of Egypt, on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. Okay, Mary Sue. Like, for real. Like, for real. The king is extremely wroth that you have been stealing in his name from his people. And you show up with the evidence that you have been stealing in his name from his people. And now he is just curious, right? Now he is greatly pleased. Why? Because you gave him your stolen goods? That's what it is, right? You didn't have the authority to do it. You brought men to extort the money. You are a thief. You are no better than David. David was a thief. He was a strong arm. He was a mafioso. This is the exact same thing. And I'm not surprised to see that glorified. That is what we see with David. But this is incredulous, right? This doesn't work in reality. There is no way that the king discovers that this man has been stealing all of this money, and then he shows up flaunting the money. Saying, I have 1,000 children bedecked in satin. That's not flaunting your money at all, right? You're giving these kids to the king. Well, that's a whole different level of what the fuck. But seriously? Like, seriously? And the king answered and said to Rickion, Thy name shall no more be called Rickion, but Pharaoh shall be thy name, since thou did exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. Wow. I am flabbergasted. My gaster is flabber, or my gaster is flabbered. Right? I don't even know how to say that. What? What? The king? The king makes him Pharaoh? The king gives him his kingdom and makes him Pharaoh because he stole from him? That's what happens here? That's not apologetics at all. What? And the king answered and said to Rickion, wait, okay. And the king and his subjects loved Rickion for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Egypt to make him a prefect under the king. Okay. That's a little more acceptable, right? And, and all the inhabitants of Egypt and his wise men did so, and it was made a law in Egypt. And they made Rickion Pharaoh prefect under Oswisserus, king of Egypt. And Rickion Pharaoh governed over Egypt, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Oswisserus, the king, would judge the people of the land one day in the year when he went out to make his appearance. And Rickion Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Egypt, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of Egypt greatly loved Rickion Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every king that he should reign over them and their seed in Egypt Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Egypt from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. Man, let me tell you something. Right, first off the top, all of the people did not love him for taxing them, right? Can we at least agree that they had libertarians too? Can we at least agree that people haven't changed so much that they would at least be a little bit pissed off by a new tax? Can we at least agree on that? He cunningly usurped the government of Egypt after the guy places him in charge. Okay. And he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Egypt, and they all loved him greatly. And they made a decree to call every king that would reign after them, or over them after this, Pharaoh. Wild. Wild. I don't even know what to say to that. Like, really? Jasher chapter 15. Where are we at? 43 minutes. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the year, land of Canaan. And the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarah were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim. And Abram beheld his wife Sarah, that she was very beautiful. And Abram said to his wife Sarah, Since God has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away, for the fear of God is not in these places. Surely then thou shalt do this. Say thou art my sister to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with thee, and that we may live, and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Egypt on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, If the Egyptians ask thee concerning Sarah, say that she is the sister of Abram. The first evidence of a cuck, I guess. All right, this is again a serious deviation from Genesis, right? In Genesis, we don't get this explanation. That is obvious. But in Genesis, we do get the explanation that it is actually his sister. Yes, they tell people that it's his sister so that they can do whatever. And then he walks away with all of these animals and lands and gold and household items and servants, right? That's the way that it plays out. He shows up, he says, "This is my sister." Then it's discovered that it's actually his wife, and he leaves with all of these animals and things, and that happens twice. So he pimps his wife out at a minimum to get monetary gain from it. Right? It's not because he was scared, not according to the Genesis story. The Genesis story, he has no reason to be scared because when it is discovered that he has literally deceived them into breaking God's command, right? They just run him off. They don't kill him. Why was he scared of his life? That they don't know God. If they know God and then refuse to sleep with his wife, which is the Genesis story, who turns out to be his actual sister in the Genesis story, why is he scared? He has no reason to be scared. He didn't have any reason to be scared then. He was deceiving them because he was pimping out his wife. And yet, with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarah and yeah, and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarah on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook Mitzrayim and came up to Egypt. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, "Give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town." And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Egypt. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarah was concealed. And the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, "What hast thou here in this chest which we have not seen? Now open thou the chest and give tithe to the king of all that it contains." And Abram said, "This chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give." And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, "It is a chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth thereof." And Abram says, "All that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest." And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarah, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarah, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarah to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. Now, this again is significantly different than Genesis. And Pharaoh beheld Sarah, and she pleased him exceedingly. There's something there. And he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife. And he prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. Uh, the, what's the movie? What's the movie? They made a movie out of this. Uh, Crap, indecent proposal. That's what it is. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abraham grieved on account of his wife. And Sarah prayed at that time and said, "O Lord God, thou didst tell my lord Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou didst command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. And now, therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy." And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarah, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarah from the power of Pharaoh. None of this would have been a problem if Abram wouldn't have been conspiratorially minded. If Abram wouldn't have been convinced that there was a problem, if he would have claimed his sister as his wife instead of trying to pass her off as just his sister, it'd have probably been fine. from this text, right? They discover her. They don't kill her. They take her because he's hiding her. Well, if you found a woman in a box coming into the city that nobody wanted to tell you about or open it, what would you think that it was? Would you think that that's his wife in the box that he's hiding from everyone? Would you believe that? Or would you believe it was a slave being sex trafficked? That would be my assumption, right? Possibly somebody with some influence since they hiding her and slavery is a thing, right? It's not like slavery was just invented. Slavery had been a thing. Now, this was prior to the socialism that the Pharaoh enacts under Joseph later, but this is still, they had slaves. He could have said it was a slave and sold her to the king. Like, there are so many reasons why this doesn't make sense. And the king came and sat before Sarah, and behold, an angel of the Lord was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarah and said to her, do not fear, for the Lord has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarah and said to her, what is that man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, he is my brother. And the king said, it is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, and maidservants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house, and the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarah, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came to Sarah, the angel smote him to the ground and acted thus to him the whole night. And the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarah. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing that evil had befallen him, said, surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarah, tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarah said, this man is my husband, and I said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid lest thou should put him to death through wickedness. And the king went away from Sarah, and the plagues of the angel and the Lord ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarah, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, what is this thou hast done to me? Why didst thou say, she is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household. Now therefore here is thy wife, take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men servants, and maidservants, and silver and gold to give to Abram, and returned to him Sarah, his wife. All right, so there's a couple of problems here, and we're just going to hit them briefly, right? This is one of the same problems that I have with the story of Balak and Balaam. The prophet Balaam, I get the names mixed up. Balak and Balaam are really close together, and they're associated together. One of them is the prince, a king, and the other one's a prophet, right? And the prince asked the prophet to come and give him a, a curse against the Israelites. And the priest goes and he makes these sacrifices, and an angel of the Lord comes to him and says, no. And he's like, all right, tell the king no. And then another angel comes and says, yes, you can go, right? But only say the things that I tell you to say. And he's like, all right, so bet. Okay, he's going to go and do it. Well, on his way to go do this, right, an angel of the Lord appears and tries to stop him. But instead of appearing to him, which he has already done before, he says, stop donkey, right? And then the donkey stops. And the guy riding the donkey gets mad because there is no reason for the donkey to stop. There's no hole, there's no water, there's no snakes, there's no nothing. The donkey just stops and he starts beating the donkey. And then the donkey starts walking again, and the angel comes and stops the donkey again. And so the guy beats the donkey again. And then the donkey speaks to him, which is wild, right? And the donkey's like, "Why are you beating me?" And he's like, "Because you're not doing what I tell you." And he's like, "Well, you don't see the angel?" And he's like, "No, I don't see the angel." And then the angel appears. Well, that is a whole series of problems, right? You got God and contradicting God again. Happens several times in that particular section of passages. But you have the donkey talking. That's a whole issue. Not outside of the scope of God's possibility, but I've never seen a donkey talk. But the angel doesn't appear to him, right? The angel has the capacity to appear to the man and say, "What are you doing? Why are you going here? You need to stop. Go no further. Here's a flaming freaking sword," right? All of that is within the scope of the angels. So why does he only appear to the donkey? Why do you not take it directly to the person that you are trying to correct and instead take it to something that is subject to? This is the same problem, right? This whole narrative that the king gets smote heavily every time he gets close. Why does the angel not appear and say, "This is the protected child of God. You are doing wrong"? Why is it that he has to be beaten about the head by an invisible force and that stops him? Right. And it has to happen repeatedly because that's what it's going to take. He can't appear and be an angel protecting her. He has to be an invisible force smacking him around. And then he can show up later and be like, "Why didn't you pay attention to the invisible smacks of wind coming from nowheres?" Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work on a logically consistent basis for how humanity would work or how divinity would work. And the king took a maiden, whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. Interesting. And the king said to his daughter, "It is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman." Yeah, that doesn't bear out, does it? And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Egypt. And Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he had first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds and tent, for the Lord was bountiful to them on account of Abram. Um, it is important to note that at this point in the Genesis narrative, there had already been the separation between Abram and Lot. That decision had already been made. Abram had already ridden to save Lot from his first imprisonment. Right? That's before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but like the narrative has a lot of problems. But according to the narrative, by the time that this particular thing happened, where he's pimping his wife twice, by that point in time, the separation had already occurred. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram for their property. This part had already happened. For their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the field of the people of the land. But the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, "What is thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy husband to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan? God gave you that land forever. You don't get to say that you are a stranger in this land among the children of Canaan. God directly gave you that land already. In this story, you don't get to say this here when it has already been said that this land was yours forever. You left temporarily due to famine. Okay. You're coming back to your own lands, not a land that you are a stranger amongst the children of Canaan. You are known. You have property. You are a property holder in the land of Canaan, according to your own testimony. And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said unto Lot, How long wilt thou be for me a stumbling block with the inhabitants of this land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray thee, separate from me. Go and choose a place where thou mayest dwell with thy cattle and all belonging to thee. But keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household. And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes towards the plain of Jordan. And he saw the whole of this place was well watered and good for man, as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sodom. And they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. And he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained in that place many years. All right, I guess instead of going on to chapter 16, we'll go ahead and start doing the wrap up here because this is going to start a whole nother section and there's probably going to be a lot of discussion in that. And we're already at an hour, and I'm trying to make these a minimum of an hour. This is more about making myself available in a live format so that people can find me and ask questions if they have me. It is about me getting comfortable with being live, talking about things that may be a little bit controversial, right? Getting comfortable with that before there is a large audience. I know, but sooner or later, things will be noticed, things will pop off, and I need to have the reps in, right? We got to be there. This bears no reality, right? Hopefully, I have been clear. Like, hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat incredulous subjects. Right? These things beyond credulity. There is no way that 5,000 people through force of arms defeated 600,000 men or a 700,000 man army, making 100,000 of them flee. Right? Didn't happen. Not a possibility outside of direct intervention from God. Like even in the biblical narrative, whenever the armies are coming and they experience their sudden issue at night, right? They get sick and they die because they drank from the waters, right? At least there is an explanation for something that happened. This is just 5,000 men defeated 700,000, and I absolutely just refuse to believe that. Not without some direct corroborating evidence that there was direct intervention, a comet, a plasma flume, fire, a volcano, or an earthquake, something, right? There would be archaeological evidence of a 700,000 man army being defeated, even if you didn't know that it was by 5,000 people. There's not. There is no record of this happening. I can state that fairly definitively because most of the things that are recorded in Exodus, right, or getting into Leviticus and the taking of the land, the genocides that happened, well, those genocides never happened. There is no archaeological evidence to support a period in which the Israelites invaded the land of Canaan, which was inhabited by giants and people who were living there in peaceful harmony. Right? There wasn't a whole lot of contention for the people there. There are problems with the narrative. There are severe problems with the narrative. And this is just an apologetics book, right? That is obvious to me. And hopefully, I'm making it fairly obvious as we go along, right? Some of this stuff just defies any sense. Like, though you had to walk up the tower for 360 days, that's got to be an allegory. There is nowheres on the planet that's going to be that far. Like, to have to walk up the ramp for 360 days or a whole year, so 365, right? At that point in time, who knows? But that doesn't make any sense. How high are you going? How wide is this space? How steep is this ramp that it takes you a year to get up there? How are you keeping yourself supplied on this journey? It is strenuous to push blocks up a ramp. Like, a lot of problems. And none of them are addressed in the text because it's an apologetics book. It is only about apologizing for the mistakes in Genesis. So far, I'm sure it's going to apologize for the mistakes in Exodus if it gets that far. I don't know when it cuts off. I mean, I don't know when it stops. I mean, And so we'll read through it. We're 92 pages into a 400-page document, so we'll be here for a little while. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated. If you put it in the box and it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with a super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of any of my books, or reaching out through the links provided in the box down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been pittstake. Peace. Thank you, Lord. That'll work.